Hey guys, it's Amy. I'm sorry to interrupt this episode, but I wanted to chime in here and just give you a little bit of a heads up that at a few points in this podcast, you're going to hear a very strange noise. At some points, it sounds like a male voice or a gurgling noise. We have no idea what this is, and we threw every editing trick we have in our back pocket at it. So we decide that we're going to leave this in here only because you can still hear Jennifer talking and it's minorly annoying, but not terribly disruptive. So hopefully you can look past it and still get a lot from Jennifer's story. It's so powerful. We just didn't want to cut it out because it will cut out part of her story and then that's going to be choppy and not make sense. So again, we apologize for this very strange interruption. We're not sure what it is. And we'll continue to monitor this as we proceed with editing future podcast episodes. Again, not sure what it is. So, all right, back to the episode. Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host, Emily Appledorn, each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
Welcome back to the NFP Podcast. We have a great episode for you today. Amy's not with us, but I have a great guest for you who's going to share her amazing story of love, loss, and life. Jennifer, welcome to the NFP Podcast.
Thank you, Emily.
It's great to see you and to have you on here. So Amy and I thought it would be really great if you could come on here and share your story, just generally speaking, your story. And so we have a few questions, but I'm hoping that this is more of a conversation than an interview, if you will, especially just between friends. So obviously you and I know each other really well, but Amy and I both felt like there were a lot of women and couples that could really benefit from hearing just your journey. And so to begin, I'm wondering if we could start with just, if you could simply, tell you, and if you want to say your husband's name, that's fine. If you want to just say my husband, I just realized that's whatever your preference is. If you don't want to use names, that's totally fine. And then just kind of tell us how you met and we can kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, so I'm not afraid to share my husband's name. He's Mundo. We met back in, I want to say 2006 on a website called Ave Maria Singles. I was living in Atlanta and he lived here and I was in the process of converting to Catholicism. We dated for 6 months, long distance, and then I got baptized and confirmed in First Communion on Easter Vigil of 2007, and we got engaged the next day. And then we were married 6 months later on the Feast of the Archangels, which is coming up next Sunday.
Happy early anniversary. Oh, that's beautiful.
2007. So we're coming up on 17 years.
Wow.
So we picked out a really special day to get married on. And then we went to Rome for our honeymoon, got the papal blessing for new spouses.
Did you wear your wedding dress?
Did. Yeah. So, and then dress, and he didn't have his tuxedo, but he had a dark suit.
Sure.
And we on stage with maybe like 7 other couples from around the world.
Wow.
And there was a girl from France right next to me. We can kind of understand each other a little bit. And I didn't understand Latin at all. So I didn't even know like the moment we had been blessed. And all of a sudden she said, "Amen." And I was like, "Amen, we're blessed." So
That's
it was
so
fantastic.
beautiful.
And I just assumed, we're in this Catholic marriage, we've got the papal blessing, we're going to get pregnant on our honeymoon, and we'll live happily ever after.
Of course.
Well, it didn't happen. About 10 months into marriage, I think I was already looking to meet with my OBGYN to find out, like, why are we not getting pregnant? When I was at that appointment to find out why we're not getting pregnant, it turned out that I was pregnant. So
Wow.
that was in our first year of marriage, 10 months in. We had an ultrasound at 8 weeks and everything was looking fine. But then when I went to my 10-week appointment, your first appointment's always like at 10 weeks. They couldn't find a heartbeat. And so they sent me to ultrasound, and they spent a long time in ultrasound, and they just confirmed the baby was just a little bit over 8 weeks. They couldn't tell me why we had lost that baby. And I actually found out that we had lost that baby on our anniversary. So that was like, are we doomed or what?
Oh, Jennifer.
A lot of feelings of, why is this happening to you? Is it something you've done? Are you cursed?
Yes.
Took a lot of time to get over that. I remember being sad for such a long time because it was like, it took so long to conceive that child,
Yes.
And then it's all over. You have all these hopes and dreams right off the bat, and then it's over. So that baby we named Michael Benedict, and he was buried at the St. Vincent Cemetery. Then we lost one more, and I can't remember what year it was. It was like a very early loss, like where you find out you're pregnant, and then a couple of days later you have a miscarriage.
Okay.
Then I made an appointment to go to Tulsa Fertility Center. I thought, these people are trained to find out what's wrong with you. They're going to run all these tests. I just know that there's something wrong, that they're going to run some kind of blood test that's going to tell them what it is.
Right.
We got up there and they run whatever their standard tests are, but they didn't test things that later on I found out years later they should have been testing. All they were concerned about is, what is your follicle stimulating hormone level, and how's your husband's test? I was up there with them telling me there was nothing wrong with me, that I was a quote unquote fertile myrtle. But because of my husband's results, that we would require IVF and ICSI if we ever wanted to have a baby. Wow. And that if we didn't do anything, we had a 3% chance of ever having a child. So I left there feeling obviously angry, disappointed, frustrated.
Did you trust them at that point? Did you feel like that these are my answers?
No, I didn't, because I still knew that there's something wrong that he's not testing. I mean, number one, he didn't test any progesterone or estrogen levels. And I didn't know at that point what else he could test, like thyroid levels and things like that.
Right.
So just in being so angry at the lack of medical care, and I don't know how to explain this, but I think I've talked to you about this before. It's almost like you have to be your own physician and do all your own research and ask for people to test this and that. So we left there. We did go through a procedure that was unsuccessful called GIFT. It's like gamete intrafallopian transfer.
Yes.
Yeah. So that did not work out. And in the process, like I had like a giant bruised up arm from their IV. And I think they were just running some kind of, I don't know how you would describe it, but just an in and out clinic where they're just running lots of patients through, not really caring for them,
Sure.
Anyway, so when that was unsuccessful, and we grew to just not like the personality of the doctor, and I started just Googling, what are the alternatives to IVF? There must be something out there, especially for people who have faith beliefs that prohibit them from using things like IVF. So somehow I stumbled upon the Pope Paul VI Institute in Omaha. But at the time, this is probably like 2009.
Okay.
I was reading all the material online, and I thought, that's so much. You have to learn how to chart and to find one of these instructors and go through all this and chart. And I just don't know that I can do that. It's a lot of work,
Yes, I do.
We had also toyed with the idea of maybe adopting, but when I looked into that, I realized how expensive it is, and I was like, no, that's impossible. So we're just going to keep praying. I can't tell you how many novenas we prayed. It was constantly we were praying novenas, constantly. And then one day, out of nowhere, Monsignor Marzik at St. Stephen's approaches me in the narthex and hands me this pamphlet. He says, take a look at this. This might, help you, or something like that.
Wow.
And it was a regular from the Institute in Omaha. And I was like, okay, there's my sign, because I've seen this before, but I brushed it off as too hard,
Of course. Yes.
So then I got in touch with it. That time there were no instructors in Northwest Arkansas. So there was someone in Kansas City, and I can't remember her name, but we would communicate by phone. And I don't know if we even had video chats.
Sure.
Maybe we did, because she had to teach me how to do the charting. But I'd have to send her my charts, and we would talk over the phone. Eventually, I went up to Omaha for an exploratory surgery, and we found out that I had massive pelvic adhesions. It was like saran wrap was wrapped around all of my organs, and ovaries were stuck to the uterus, and there was a little bit of endometriosis speckled about, and I had massive amounts of inflammation. There were these yellow globules just hanging off of my organs. So strange.
Wow. Did you have painful periods?
Yeah, my whole life.
Yeah.
I've had painful periods. And I need to, I guess, back up. 6 months before we got married, I had a surgery up in Atlanta, Georgia, to remove a fibroid tumor from the backside of my upper uterus. And so I ended up with a post-op infection after that, and I was in the hospital for 5 days. So I guess that's where all of the adhesions came from.
Could be. Yeah.
So, doctor up in Tulsa didn't, look into that and diagnose that. So once we went through that exploratory surgery, Dr. Hilgers told me that I needed to come back to do, the big surgery. So it was sometime in 2010. I think it was May 2010. I went up, and I had a 5-hour surgery with Dr. Hilgers, where he went in and carefully took down all of the adhesions and the endometriosis. He has all of these surgical procedures and the things that he does to prevent creating new scar tissue as he's operating.
Yes.
And part of that surgery was he put Gore-Tex around the organs once he was done. And then 10 days later, I went back for a laparoscopic procedure where he removed the Gore-Tex, made sure the tubes were open, and sprayed some kind of anti-adhesion medications in there and closed me up. At that time, he also, I guess it must have been at that time, he had diagnosed me with low thyroid, and low progesterone. And because of the inflammation, he recommended an anti-inflammatory diet. So at that point, I don't remember how long from surgery to when we could start trying to conceive again. But once we were able to start trying to conceive again, of course, I was on thyroid medications that he prescribed. I was on T3. And then the protocol for trying to conceive was on PEEK plus 3, 5, 7, and 9. I would do injections of HCG. And once we had a pregnancy, we would get a blood test. They would confirm it. And then I had progesterone injections twice a week. And they would have me go every 2 weeks for a blood draw to test that progesterone level, and then titer the progesterone injection that I was getting. I will say that for some reason, my brain doesn't want to tell my body to produce progesterone. So we had 4 children, and in every single one of those pregnancies, I have needed not only the shots, but sometimes taking progesterone orally, and sometimes also using the same oral tabs as a vaginal suppository. I mean, it was like, if you could smoke progesterone, I would have done that.
Yes, I do. I often say if progesterone was illegal, I would be behind bars, like no question, because I agree. I need it. I need it in my life. It's crazy. I think it's very common for women to be to have low progesterone. So that's
Yeah, so
amazing that he figured out all of those things and was able to give you a reasonable treatment plan.
right. And I think I need to back up too. So before we got pregnant with our first son, Henry, Dr. Hilders also, I contacted him when I was diagnosed here locally with ulcerative colitis. And the gastroenterologist said, we don't know what causes it. We'll just put you on medication for the rest of your life. So I let Dr. Hilder's office know that I had that diagnosis, and they prescribed low-dose naltrexone for me, which I was on during my first pregnancy. Since that time, when I got that diagnosis, I went to a naturopath, had some testing done, and found out I was really reactive to wheat and dairy and a whole lot of seafood. So I just changed my diet, and I have not needed any kind of gastro medications since then. I'm fine. So
that's amazing.
that's something. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So getting back to like fertility and pregnancies, my first son, Henry, was born in 2012. And then I nursed him for like 2 years and 2 months. And I remember being on a phone call with Dr. Hilders where we're kind of discussing what's going on and everything. And he suggested that I might not get pregnant again until I stopped nursing. So I stopped nursing, and like a month or two later, we were pregnant with Leo.
Wow.
So, yeah. So again, on his pregnancy, I needed the progesterone in all the various forms. After Leo, we lost another baby, and it was another situation where you see a heartbeat at like 6 weeks, and then you go in for your 10-week appointment. There's no longer a heartbeat. Baby passed around 8 weeks, 5 days. Sometime after that, I don't remember when exactly, I got back on the HCG protocol, and we conceived Mary Grace. Her pregnancy was a little bit scary. I had like a blood bubble underneath the placenta. And
Is that a hematoma? A hematoma?
Something like that. I can't remember the precise name of it.
Sure.
Seemed like.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, and I won't be able to say it accurately, but I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So I was on bed rest for a long time, and really concerned that we were going to lose her.
Wow.
But she made it. But also, I was on the progesterone the whole time.
How was that with, you have 2 little kids and you're on bed rest? How long were you on bed rest for her pregnancy? How did that affect raising the boys?
They were a little bit, Henry was like 5, I guess, and Leo was 3. So they're pretty much self-sufficient to me. It's not like I had to pick up a baby or anything like that.
Sure.
Just managed somehow. It's hard to remember when you're living in the trenches. Like it happens, and you move on, and you kind of forget about it.
Okay, Jennifer, so you speak about Mary Grace's pregnancy and how there was many moments throughout that were difficult and just definitely caused you, it sounds like, a lot of stress perhaps, and worry maybe. And as your friend, I know that you had Mary Grace, and then now you have a 2-year-old, little William. And so there was such a span there of time. Do you want to speak a little more to that time frame between Mary Grace's birth and William's birth?
Sure. There's, I think, a 5-year gap between William and Mary Grace, but that entire time we were open to life. But we kept experiencing death, loss after loss. The first one was in July of 2018. So Mary Grace would have been like around 6 months old. I ended up having an ectopic pregnancy, which took a very weird start. It started with a very heavy period, and then I kept spotting. I was like, so I was on like day 13 of spotting, and I thought, I must have some kind of crazy hormonal imbalance. I want to go in and get checked out for that. So when I arrive sometime in July of 2018 and see a nurse practitioner, and they, of course, make you go and pee on a stick when you get there. And I'm explaining to her how many days I have had this spotting, and I think I just got a hormonal imbalance. And an assistant comes in and hands her this test result, and she says, well, you're pregnant. And I said, that's impossible.
Wow.
I had a very, very heavy period. She's like, people have periods all the time when they're pregnant. And I'm like, not me. That's impossible. So I think that same day they put me into ultrasound and they couldn't see anything. So they wanted me to come back like a couple of days later and do another blood test. And that blood test showed that the level had decreased a little bit. But then I think they wanted me to come back a couple of days later just to kind of follow it out to make sure that it was going down all the way. So the next time I came back, the HCG had increased.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to really thinking, well, what if it was just so early that they couldn't see anything, and now this is a viable pregnancy? I get a phone call from the doctor's office saying that the doctor himself wanted to see me. So I was like, okay, maybe he's going to tell me that this is a viable pregnancy. We just need to get on progesterone,
Right.
see it through. So when I arrive, he tells me very bluntly he is concerned about the possibility of an ectopic pregnancy and that he needed to get me into an ultrasound that day just because of the length of time it had been. It'd been like, I think we were by that time, 13 plus 6 more, 19 days.
Wow.
Since I had my period. And so somehow he found a place out in Bella Vista that had an open slot for ultrasound that day. And it was kind of later in the day, like 6 p.m. or something.
Wow.
I went for that ultrasound, and the guy was very aggressive with that wand, pressing down on my abdomen. Super painful. Interestingly enough, that was painful, but like having an ectopic pregnancy, I felt no pain whatsoever. I had no idea that I had an ectopic pregnancy. So they wouldn't tell me anything in that ultrasound. But on the way home, I got a phone call from my doctor, and he said, we found it. It's in the right tube, and we need to operate immediately. We can do it tonight, or we can do it in the morning. And I said, well, I'd rather be well rested, so let's do it in the morning. So the next morning I went in. He tried to save the tube, but he couldn't, he couldn't ensure that there was adequate flow through that tube. So he decided to remove the tube. Wow. And he did tell me that once he got inside to look, that there was blood in the abdomen, which means I was on the verge of rupturing. So,
oh my heavens.
So yeah, I ended up losing the right tube, which was a very surreal and traumatic thing to lose that part of your body that is connected with, your ability to conceive children. I just felt like they should have given me that organ to bury, especially
Right. Oh,
my baby was in that organ. I know Mercy does this service where they take the infants that are miscarried over to the cemetery and bury them.
right.
I think that the baby is buried over there. So we've been over to the cemetery a few times, and it's hard to figure out because at some point they started burying them all along the fence line with just like a plaque
Yeah.
with everybody's names, and it's hard to line up like the date that you lost your baby versus the date they buried.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only hardball in the area, so the others have lost. So anyway, following that loss of the tube and the baby, we asked our doctor, so now where does this leave us? What are our chances of having a baby again? And he said, probably reduced it by 50%. So I'm thinking, oh, we had a 3% chance. Now we have a 1.5% chance.
Wow.
But then I had a phone call with Dr. Fishers, and I asked him the same question. And he said, well, if the tube that was removed was diseased, you might have a better chance now. And
Unbelievable.
it turned out that Dr. Hilters was right. Because in April of 2019, I got pregnant again. We, because of my history, went for an ultrasound at 6 weeks to confirm that there's a heartbeat. And there was a heartbeat, so we were super excited. And then the next appointment you get is your 10-week appointment, right? They don't want to see you till 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got there was no longer a heartbeat. And they sent me to ultrasound, and the baby looked like it had passed around 8 weeks, 5 days. And so nothing was happening. I had no idea that my baby was dead. And that's the weirdest feeling, to walk around not knowing that your baby is dead. You think you're pregnant and you have all of these hopes and excitements. And you feel like a walking tomb. I don't know how to describe that any other way.
I think that's very accurate.
And the only options were either take a medication, which I cannot remember the name of it, that forces your body to go into a miscarriage. Or, and also if you take that drug, you still have a 50% chance of still needing a DNC. I decided to go with the DNC. So we do that. And then we continue, as the hopeful people we are, to continue to try. And then in June 2020, we're pregnant again. But the same thing happened. We see a heartbeat at 6 weeks. We go to the appointment at 10 weeks, and there's no longer a heartbeat. And baby passed around 8 weeks, 5 days. Go ahead. You want to ask something?
This part, just because each loss except the ectopic pregnancy, for as far as we know, is the same time frame. I can't imagine how you're feeling as you go to that appointment, having experienced this multiple times, not knowing if you're going to experience it again, and then you do. I can only imagine how that must feel. Do you remember? I mean,
yes, I can, remember thinking that there's something significant about this 8-week, 5-day mark. Like, what's going on? There has to be something that somebody can identify. And I felt like frustrated and panicked that this doctor's doing nothing to figure out what's wrong, just chalking it up to something's wrong with the baby. Well, why does it keep happening at the same point?
Right.
And why does my stubborn body not notice that there's something wrong and miscarry the baby? So the June 2020 instance, again, I had to go for a DNC because my body was not miscarrying. So at this point, that's, I think, my third DNC, because I had a DNC between Leo and Mary because I had started the miscarriage naturally. And then it started to get, after several days, a lot heavier. And so there was retained placenta or something, and they had to do the DNC. So that's 3 DNCs. That's a lot. We go forward. We're pregnant again in March 2021, and the same thing happens. So 6 weeks, you've got a heartbeat. 10 weeks, your baby died at 8 weeks and 5 days. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try to wait it out this time. But that was a terrible decision because you're a walking tomb. Everyone else's lives are still going on. Your husband's going to work. People are laughing and having a good time in society. Everything's still going on, and you're waiting for something to happen, and you can't move on with the healing process because you're waiting. So finally, I don't remember how long I waited, but eventually I said, that's enough. I'll take I think it was the 4th DNC. I don't know at what point it gets too dangerous to do that, but
right.
I didn't know. There's also a risk of waiting so long that you end up with an infection. So that was another consideration. So 3 instances in a row of the exact same thing happening every year for 3 years. And finally, I decide to go meet with a priest to get some advice on what to do. And so I went to meet with Monsignor Scott because I had this idea that we're married, okay? God wants us to have children, I believe. Whatever happens to us is God's will, right? Does God will that we keep trying and keep losing babies? Like, does being open to life mean being open to death? I don't know what to do. So I went to meet with Monsignor to get like an answer to this big question. Like, does being open to life mean being open to death? Like, does God want me to keep suffering? And he asked me, he's like, wait a minute, how many pregnancies have you lost? And I said, altogether 7. And he said, something's not right. Something's not right. What did the doctors say? Well, the thing that they always say to a woman that loses a baby, that there was something wrong with the baby.
Right.
And he says, no. And I said, I know, I feel that in my heart. How can something be wrong with 7 different babies? And I'll add that my husband is a member of a gigantic family. My children have 105 first cousins, and there's not a single thing wrong with any of the children in the family. They're all perfectly healthy. We don't have any genetic issues. How could we have 7 babies that have something wrong with them? Something else is going on.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about how that went meeting with Monsignor.
So, he brought up, well, that's a lot of losses. The answer that you got from your doctor that there's something wrong with the baby, that doesn't seem right. He asked me, has anybody in your family ever been a member of the Masons? And I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know for sure on my side. I mean, obviously, I don't know my whole family history. Maybe there's somebody from long ago.
Right.
But I know my husband's grandfather was a Mason, but it wasn't a blood relation. Like, his grandfather adopted his father. And Monsignor said it didn't matter, blood or adoption. And so he had a book of prayers, and there were some special prayers to break Masonic curses. And he had us pray them with him once in his office. And he said we needed to pray those 2 more times on our own. And then he recommended that I do a novena to the Holy Spirit for guidance.
Wow.
So I definitely, after praying those prayers in his office, I felt like this huge relief off of my shoulders. And it was so interesting, the different things that would come up in the prayers. Like, it mentions a lot of different body ailments, things that I've experienced in my life.
Yes.
So I think that was very spot on. And I think it had something to do with what was going on. But then also praying the novena, during the course of that novena, I was inspired to ask in a NAPRO Technology Facebook group, what else can I get tested for? Because I've already been diagnosed with a low thyroid and low progesterone. I'm already eating paleo. What else is there? And several people mentioned blood clotting disorder. So I asked my local doctor to run that test on me. And I think the very last day of the novena, I got the results back that showed there was a low positive for a blood clotting disorder, which is an autoimmune condition. I have other autoimmune conditions like ulcerative colitis, and I know some people think endometriosis is autoimmune.
Right.
So when I got those results, I was like, I knew that was the answer. And I felt relief that we had an answer, but also a lot of sorrow that we could have found that out 4 years ago. If a doctor had been doing his job, instead of just assuming that there's something wrong with the baby. So many doctors do that. They don't want to find out what's wrong. So I would say to women that are listening, if you have a gut feeling that something's not right, then keep pursuing, keep finding out, what are other reasons why pregnancies don't survive. Blood clotting disorders is something that was a whole new area to me that I didn't know of. It means that your blood clots too easily. And it doesn't affect, apparently, your everyday life. The only effect it has is recurrent miscarriage.
Wow.
So when we got that result, my doctor said, well, you have to retest in 12 weeks. And if it's still positive, then we can diagnose it. Well, me being a responsible person and concerned about my health, knowing that it's an autoimmune condition, I bought a book with autoimmune recipes in it, and I ate only those recipes for the next 12 weeks. And when they tested me again, it was gone. But I thought to myself, if I am pregnant again, I wanted to test me again, because what if it only shows up when I'm pregnant? So when we got pregnant this last time with our baby William, he tested me, and sure enough, it was back. And so he consulted with the high-risk doctor, and they agreed that, I don't technically qualify for this diagnosis because it's a low positive and they weren't able to get it to repeat. But given that combined with the history of losses, they were going to treat it. So during William's pregnancy, in addition to all of the progesterone, I was also on blood thinners, which is an injection every day. And then that was a once a day injection up until 37 weeks, I want to say. Mm-hmm. Then they switched me to heparin, which has a shorter life. And so I had to do those injections twice a day. And I want to just add this, the spiritual aspect of the miracle of his pregnancy. I mean, all of them are miracles, but sometimes you get a little bit more in your face evidence that God is saying, I'm here with you. And this is a reminder of that. But every one of my pregnancies, I've gone for a C-section because of the myomectomy I had before I was married. So I had never been in labor, ever. But with William, on the day we were scheduled to go in for the C-section, we weren't supposed to report until noon that day. And all during the night, I kept getting up to go pee. I thought my bladder hurts. I've got to go pee again. And I thought, I must have a bladder infection. They're going to have to treat me for that when I get to the hospital. And somewhere around 5:30 or 6 in the morning, I thought, it dawned on me, maybe that's what labor is. It just feels like your bladder hurts, And so I was like, babe, we got to go to the hospital. I think I'm in labor. And they told me they never wanted me to be in labor. So we get to the hospital and end up finally, getting pushed through. At first, they were going to let me wait. And I'm like, wow. They must have heard me talk in the hallway, because I was talking to my husband. I can't believe they're going to make me wait. I thought they didn't want me to go into labor,
Yeah.
So we got our seat. The baby arrived. And then I found out, I think sometime later that day, that it was the feast of St. Januarius, who is the patron saint of bleeding disorders. Oh. And so it was he was meant to be born on that day to show me that this blood clotting disorder, God had it in his hands and he would take care of it. So
it's so amazing. It's so redemptive. It's so redemptive. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
So
that's amazing.
And I just want to say, don't believe a mainstream doctor who's just giving you a flippant answer, like the doctor in Tulsa who said you have a 3% chance of ever having a baby without IVF and ICSI. I've always wanted to send him a letter and send him a copy of Dr. Hilger's book, but I'm too busy. I have 4 children and he probably doesn't care. He doesn't want to practice differently,
Right. And I'm guessing this may be something you've thought about, but in all actuality, if someone with your clotting disorder were to consider and pursue IVF, could it be said that you would still most likely lose babies? IVF is not going to answer that, is not a solution for that problem.
Yeah, it's also not a solution for thyroid problems or progesterone issues, inflammation in your body, if nobody's telling you how to address that,
Right.
It's a delicate process. There's so many things that affect pregnancy.
Right. Wow.
And NAPRO technology I've always said that it treats your whole body. It looks at everything that could be influencing your fertility. And I love that. I love that they're getting to the root of the problem.
It's amazing. Would you mind speaking to your age and your age and connection with your pregnancies. I mean, specifically just as you're in this, as you're going through these multiple losses in a row. And my question is, did you ever feel like giving up? How did you persevere?
I would say that I persevered just because of my personality type. Just being a determined person, but also I've always been hopeful. That's just like a personality trait, you know?
Mhm.
And I just felt like I was called to the faith. I was called to this marriage, and that God had somewhere he was going to lead me. And I always just had this intuitive feeling that there would be 4 children.
Wow.
So every time we lost a child and my husband would wonder if we were ever going to get pregnant again, I would say, I just know there's 4 children. I just know it.
Wow.
And so in terms of age, I was 28 when we got married. I'm now 45. And people ask us, are you going to have any more? And I'm like, it's in God's hands. I don't know.
Right.
I still have regular cycles, and I have a sister-in-law that had a baby at 46, but they don't have fertility issues. You know, they look at each other and get pregnant. So, but we're open always.
Right.
But
That's beautiful.
who knows?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Throughout this time, you get married and you immediately start trying to achieve healthy pregnancies. As this journey continues, would you mind speaking to the suffering in the sense of how did it affect your marriage? How did your husband, was there a difference in how you guys, dealt with these losses? Is there anything that you would add in regards to what that looked like in your marriage?
Yeah, I think that was an extra burden for me to deal with because, he would move on a whole lot quicker. He'd be off to work and live his life. It didn't happen to him physically. He didn't show that he had, sad emotions. I can remember like with the first loss, just feeling really isolated for sure because I remember him telling me that everybody was tired of me being sad. And I'm like, I'm sorry that my loss is so inconvenient for everybody else. I don't know. I was surrounded by people who were having babies constantly with no effort. So it was a very isolating, lonely experience. And it's hard to describe. It's like, I know my husband loves me deeply, but he didn't know how to show me that he was there for me in these losses. And I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you have even been able to explain or express what you needed in those times? Did it feel hard to even know what you need?
Yeah, I think so, because it's like what you need is your baby, That's what I need. So I don't know, I guess just being there with you is something you need. Just sit here with me while I cry,
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Mhm.
But somehow, you just have to forgive and move on and keep hoping,
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. You mentioned that your first loss, you named Michael Benedict. And I know, just because I know you, that you have named your babies. Would you mind speaking to that as far as for women or couples that might be listening that maybe haven't thought of that or
Yeah.
feel uneasy about that? Can you speak to how that affected your healing, if at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. It definitely helped with my healing because to me, I want the world to know that that was a human being. That was my baby. That person existed and does exist. You know, um, every one of them has been named. They're all buried over at St. Vincent's. Usually I picked the names based on like who the saint of the day was. Um, yeah, I think they're all based on like who the saint of the day was. So
Mhm. It's beautiful. Um, as we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't discuss or that you would like to share before we conclude? That you would want
um,
other women to know, or just about your journey in general, or
yeah, I think I would like to share that it's so much easier today to get NFP treatments. I mean, I feel like a pioneer back in the day. There was nothing here in Northwest Arkansas. And now I understand there is maybe at least one NFP trained physician, maybe not a surgeon, but
we do have a local family physician that can read Creighton model charts. So yes, in Northwest Arkansas, we'll link to her in the show notes. Yes.
okay. And I would just say that it does work. That was one of the big fears that I had when I first started with NAPRO technology back in 2009. Like, does this really work? I'm going to do all these things and have to learn this charting method and go through these surgeries and all this. Does it work? Yeah, it works. 3% chance of ever having a child to here we have 4 children without the use of IVF. So,
It's a miracle in today's society. If you don't know everything that you've been through and the healing that you needed in order to get to this point, when you put it on paper, 3% chance for living babies, it's completely defies everything. And so if people can know that there are antidotes to IVF, there are alternatives, healthy alternatives, it does give so much hope. And it's stories like yours. It is when people hear the perseverance, to me, it gives me hope. The perseverance is just um it holds a lot of weight for me because I think it's so beautiful how much you fought for your babies. And for anyone that has been around you during that journey, it's really, really remarkable to witness. So I appreciate how open you've been about everything because it can only help people. You've helped me tremendously, and I know so many other women and couples. So I am so hopeful that that is just going to continue by sharing your story here. So
I am so glad that I've been an inspiration to you, Emily. I love you and I hope that this is inspiring to other people.
thank you. Yes, I love you too. Thank you so much. I think that does it. That's I think that's everything. Unless you can think of anything else, I think we'll wrap up.
I mean, the only thing I would add is that NAPRO technology can treat all kinds of other feminine issues too. And like as I get older, I'm going to be looking to NAPRO technology to deal with all of the issues that may come along as we get older. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because there is that component. Yes, so often it gets described with women and couples that are trying to achieve healthy pregnancies, but it is there for single women that have painful periods. And yeah, that post reproductive life that might need assistance as well. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's very
it's like
helpful.
on the front end of it, the people that are young women, I remember my experience as a young woman with painful periods. Well, we're going to put you on a birth control pill. It's not the right answer. You need to figure out why, So NAPRO technology is not going to use a birth control pill. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, as you get into your older non-reproductive years, the first thing they bring up is let's just take out your uterus. Let's do a hysterectomy. That's not acceptable. I
No.
want you to actually treat me, not take my body parts out,
Yes, I do. Yes, exactly. Very well said. Yes. Yes. That's very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming on and sharing everything that you did. And God bless you and Mundo and all these babies that you have. I just think about the joy, the eternal joy between your family. It's incomprehensible. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Until next time. Bye-bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.